Hello and welcome to episode 93 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is a man who continually has fracases with our technical director, Greendragoon.
What?
You get the joke there because you are our technical director.
Well, it's nice that somebody told me.
I can make up all kinds of other titles for you if you want.
Yeah, just as long as one of them results in me getting paid.
I wouldn't go that far. And we also have with us the only Gamma Quadrant recruit you're going to see, Markhawkman.
Well, I like that.
And welcome back to the show, Kendra.
Hi.
Who will be around the community a bit more often now that she has internet of her own.
Yes.
We're very happy.
So am I.
Can imagine. It's like living in the dark ages without internet.
Totally is.
So we're a little bit light on Foundry news, but there are two little tidbits that I picked up during the week. Taco Fangs told us a couple of things. The first one is that there is a fix for the issue with suns on custom Foundry backdrops not appearing. He wasn't quite sure what build that fix was going to be in, but my guess is it's probably in the Tribble one, and it probably won't go live till Season 10, but we should probably check after tomorrow's patch. On Holodeck, it is not in the patch notes, but we know how that goes sometimes. But in any case, at some point we will be getting that fix, so that's nice. The other thing he mentioned is that so in the course of doing the sector space update, they've been updating the textures on stars that you see in sector space, and somebody asked about gas giants on the forums, and he said, I think that's one of the things that would be on the list. If at some point they want to go through and look through all of their materials and do updates, is update their gas giants, which hopefully might filter down to the Foundry assets. I don't know. But it would be nice to have some more. And some better looking gas giants, because we're a bit limited on the gas giants we can do. Unless you want to, use the Jupiter or Saturn maps, that sort of thing.
I'll just be happy when Bejor is the right color.
What, Bejor is the wrong color?
Bejor is the wrong color in the Foundry, and it has been being reported for at least 3 years, according to what I saw in the forums. It looks like Cardassia, which is very ironically wrong.
Well, I know in sector space, at least, there were just a ton of planets that used the wrong texture or just reused somebody's texture. Like, there were things out in Eta Eridani that looked like Earth or something. So
Well, like, Bejor is covered in water, and it looks like a desert planet in the Foundry map. It looks right in the in-game map. It's just the Foundry map. It's wrong.
Well, we should try reporting that again. Because you never know when something will get traction.
Yeah, the last time I reported it, I think, was like a year ago.
Unfortunately, it's probably low on the list of fixes.
Is it a case where our version is just an old version and it never
probably
got updated? And never
Apparently,
got the new version?
yes. Yeah, they apparently had fixed it in-game, and they just never fixed it in the Foundry.
Which reminds me, where we're standing now is on Vulcan, on the social map by the new Spock Memorial, which it should be said is not going to be in the Foundry automatically, because the maps that we have are not updated just because there's an updating game. I mean, we've actually Vulcan has gone through several iterations, and the one we have in the Foundry dates back to launch, so it doesn't have the buildings that you can see in the background there by the stairs. So I think probably the problem... Oh, go ahead.
was gonna say, I almost wonder if a compromise could be to get the statue itself.
As an asset, yeah, certainly could be.
'Cause I know a lot of the building updates are things that we have the buildings themselves in the Foundry. They're just not on the map.
We do, or at least some versions of them. But I believe it was revamped for when they did they created the updated version of Diplomatic Orders. Is when they did some. But yeah, I mean, automatically updating maps with new geometry could break missions, so I'd rather they not do that. But if they wanted to put a new version in with all the changes, that'd be great. Obviously, that takes a lot of work. Putting in the statue asset by itself would be easier, for sure.
Well, I've seen on multiple occasions the results of what happens when they automatically update a map in the Foundry.
Yeah.
The results are usually involve people posting on the forums wondering why something is broken. Because it will, almost every time they change something, someone will be unhappy because it broke what they did using it. I mean, for an example, I made a mission using one of the mech ground maps, and for some unknown reason, during one of the updates, they moved around some of those big spire mountain things that are on the map. Why? I have no idea. But all of a sudden, the structures that I had built on the map were no longer next to a spire. They were floating in midair.
It's weird. I mean, as you bring that up, it brings back to my memory. I just was revamping my Descent series and discovered that there's some new volcanoes that were added to one of the maps. And I don't know why, I don't know when, and I don't know. It seems like, something was updated in-game and did filter down to a Foundry map, which is very odd because it doesn't always happen. So I couldn't tell you what the logic is.
I know Taco had said that it's part of his standard procedure to save off a copy of a map. So I'm kind of wondering if possibly during the early days of the Foundry, whoever was adding those maps didn't do that. And so we're connected to the official map versus a copy of the official map.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's just a theory.
Yeah.
Well, the idea that it might somehow share geometry does actually seem to have merit, though, because, I mean, you define something and then you use it two different places. From a programming standpoint, it seems efficient, but it has, shall we say, issues if you want to change one of them later but not the other.
And I know we've seen a number of occasions where they'll update a particular asset, and that change will filter down to the Foundry.
I want to say even the Iconia map has changed because the in-game version has changed.
Yeah.
I think Sir Boulevard was posting screenshots of that.
It's one thing I noticed when I was tinkering with it for the mission I made. It looks... Well, actually, you know what? I haven't looked back at that since they released the new Romulan story arc, but it's something I noticed when I was tinkering with it, because at one point in the past, the Iconia map was a bit less interesting than the version prior to the revamp.
Well, bottom line, it is a good idea to keep an eye on your old missions, because occasionally volcanoes will appear for no reason and mess up some of your objectives.
And technically, after each major update, when the Foundry goes down or brought back up, we're supposed to check these things.
We are.
It's kind of funny because in the case of the Mecha Ground map, the story I'd created is that the mountain peaks are actually a sentient life form that's kind of like a Horta mixed with a, well, mountain. They don't normally move, but, you know. I don't think I'm going to write that into the mission, though. It seems a bit difficult to shoehorn in.
So the other piece of big news that Cryptic released, and we can only speculate on how it will affect the Foundry, is this new Delta Recruits thing, which was put up Monday, I believe. Not a whole lot of specific details, but it'll be something to do with, you know, creating new characters and having a sort of alternate storyline for these new characters that people will make in game. And you know, you'll be accomplishing objectives. It'll be some, you know, filling up things for server-wide goals and getting benefits that will then affect the rest of your account. With some fun propaganda art style that Thomas the Cat made. I believe this will start in April or May. Is that right?
It seems like it's probably the big thing that's the core of Season 10. Because, you know, when they do a season update, it's not just, you know, rearranging a few maps. Granted, in this case, they're rearranging the entirety of sector space, but that isn't a season update. That's like a half season.
No,
Well,
I
usually
so.
seasons tend to have, you know, some kind of big game system update plus some plot stuff. Generally, it's like both usually.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a new reputation system and some kind of new endgame content relating to this upcoming battle with the Iconians. I also wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of feature episode.
I think you're probably right about that.
What I found
Well,
interesting about
the post by Trendy did hint at maybe possibly there's it's one of those the future went horribly wrong, so we're going back in time to fix it sort of things.
actually kind of brings to what I was going to say, which I found interesting, is because the post kind of makes it sound like there's some kind of supplemental story going on with this leveling of a new character. Like they have access to a contact that isn't normally there and will provide an augmented aspect to the story as you level through.
Did say something interesting about a experienced future captain is traveling back in time.
Well, one thing
I
that
don't
someone
really know who
pointed
that
out.
is.
One thing that someone pointed out on the forum is that people have found in certain missions these phantom NPCs that look like they shouldn't be there, but are there. Which makes me kind of wonder, because is that what these things were created to be for? Yeah, I don't know, but it's one of those things that seems like an odd coincidence, I guess you could say, that they're going to be adding a future guy style contact to the game, and there are these unknown entities on certain maps that don't look like they should be there, even though they are there. But, you know, it's still speculation. We don't really even know if we're ever going to have NPCs in the mission, or if they're just going to call you.
Well, generally speaking, at this point, we don't know very much about it. There's going to be a lot of details that they won't be releasing for a while. But my thought is, you know, as far as affecting the Foundry, my thought is that there's going to be a lot of more alts, people making new characters. So a lot of people traveling around in sector space, and hopefully a lot more people seeing our missions in the top 3 system. So if you're making a mission, get it done and get people to go and review it, and get it out there, get it qualified so it is in the top 3 system, and put it in a place where new players are going to see it. That's my advice.
But going back to that thing about the maps, this is where I stop and wonder. It's like, wait a second. So if episode updates have caused the Foundry maps to change in the past, what is this going to do to the Foundry maps? Will we suddenly start seeing mysterious time travelers wandering around our Foundry missions that we didn't put there?
Well, no, because they're contacts, not
I would guess
assets.
probably not. Probably not. However, I imagine we will have downtime. Would be rather predictable.
For
At least
10,
a
possibly.
couple weeks. It's a season update, so of course we're going to have some.
But the big question is, does this begin or end with the season update?
Don't know. It could be a lead up to the season 10.
Friendy did actually give us one piece of concrete information. Once this has started, it will continue for 2 months.
Yeah. She did say that. It kind of brings back to my mind the some of the things from early World of Warcraft. There were things where it was like server-wide updates where you went and donated materials and did objectives, and based on that, there was a progress update. And once people had done enough of these things, a new stage of the event opened. And so I wonder if it's going to be a little bit like that.
That does seem likely.
Back in that game, you had multiple servers, so you had like competition between them, which was kind of fun. But obviously, we don't have that here because we only have the one server.
Going back to the map thing, another thing I just thought of is that they mentioned something about how these Delta recruit characters are going to have extra objectives when completing missions that are basically separate from the actual mission. Not sure what those are, but
it'd be kind of fun if we could do that in Foundry missions.
Well, what I was getting at though is that maybe possibly those are going to involve adding more things to the episode maps, which, well, like I said before, sometimes when they change the episode maps, unexpected things happen.
True.
In the Foundry.
Very possible, as we were just talking about. So I think we'll kind of have to wait for some more details before we really know too much about what's going to be going on. But just on the face of it, I think it could be something fun. Definitely good to be trying new things. So let's move on to what we've been working on, and why don't we ask our guest first? So Kendra, now that you've got internet back, have you been working in the Foundry?
I haven't actually gotten a whole lot done in the Foundry. I've logged in a few times and okay, I think I just lost you guys for a minute.
No, we're still here.
No, we're still here.
I've logged in a few times and messed with a few things, but I have, is it 4 missions I'm working on right now? I think it's 4. I actually, the last time I got any serious amount of work done was in January when I was on vacation.
So can you tell us a little bit about these missions that you're working on?
Well, There is the next episode of my series that I started of Bejor and Cardassia, which I kind of am waiting for the new ESD map, which I am an optimist. I am believing we're going to get it.
Hopefully, maybe soon. Fingers crossed.
Well,
Yeah,
we'll
like
get it.
in
It's
my
just a
lifetime.
question of when.
I think somebody tweeted Taco about it recently, and somebody said maybe hopefully by the end of March, and he said, "Yeah, if all goes according to plan."
So, I mean, I can do it without that. It's just it would be really nice. So I had messed around with that a bit. And then I have another one that I'm working on that will probably be the third episode. And that one, I am doing a huge part of it underwater. Because, so Bayshore is pretty much covered in water. Like, I think there's actually more water on Bejor than Earth, if I remember correctly. And yet, we never see any of the oceans of Bejor. So, that was something I wanted to do. And then, when I was on vacation, I started messing around in the character creator just for fun, just playing. And I had just been on Pinterest, and one of my other hobbies is doll collecting. And so I was looking at Blythe dolls right before I went into the Foundry. And for those of you that don't know what those are, they're these dolls with large heads and very large eyes. Think anime. So I decided to see if I could replicate that sort of a look in the character creator. And I ended up coming up with these really super creepy Tim Burton style dolls. And then I ended up writing a story to go with them. So it's kind of been evolving and has nothing to do with my previous story threads that I'd been working on, but that's kind of my project that I've been more interested in lately than the other two. So, yeah.
Well, I hope you post some screenshots of that, because that sounds really funny. And possibly very creepy. If you're not into dolls.
Yes. I was freaking out Rogue and Zarbane.
It sounds like a great idea for like a horror mission. Night of the Living Dolls.
I might have nightmares just from listening to it.
The idea is to go all steampunk with it. And they're androids, but they look like dolls. And so their actual physical form is fairly primitive, but they are actually quite emotionally complex. So basically all the work went into the innards and not the outer parts.
Very cool. All right. Dragoon, what have you been working
on? Not too much. I've been trying to figure out a few things. Started playing around with some maps, see if there's any pre-existing maps I could use to not have to completely rebuild every map from scratch. One thing I kind of did want to ask is, moving forward, how much should I try to avoid spoilers?
Spoilers, for example, say for part 3 of your series?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's lots of things that I'm kind of wrestling with as far as the story is concerned, but at the same time, I'm kind of afraid to ever bring it up because it might spoil things.
Oh, I'd say, there might be some ways around spoilers, but I think you got a lot of your players listen to this show, so I wouldn't spoil it too much.
Well, me personally, my take on spoilers is that there's only one context in which spoilers are really an issue for me, and that's in a situation where you're meant to try to figure out what's happening as you go along. The rest of the time, I don't really care.
They say if you're really trying to surprise players with something, then you definitely don't want to spoil that.
Yeah. I might still have to pull you guys aside sometime after the show to help me figure out how to tackle a few logistical problems with the plot that have cropped up.
And they say you were also doing some sort of non-mission related Foundry snooping this week, weren't you?
Yes, I was looking for the long lost free cam command, and I ended up going into the Neverwinter Foundry, finding out what their command was, because they actually have a button that's a free cam button. So I found that, and it popped up, and it gave me the command. I took it back into our Foundry, plugged it in, it accepted the command. I mean, so it did the little red text up in the corner and everything. Just nothing happened. So I'm kind of wondering if Neverwinter Foundry might have stolen and then broke our free cam command. At least broke it for us.
I suppose it's possible. I can't remember exactly when it stopped working.
Probably about the same time that Neverwinter was rolling out that 3D in preview editor. But either way, I mean, I also tried the free cam command that Smirk was using on the live stream. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to work, where that command is above our access level.
It's only dev magic, yes.
We have slight dev magic. We have level 2 access, and apparently Smirker's up on level 5. I don't know what levels 3
Agent Coulson is up on level 7. So you were also, I think, talking to some people about maybe making a text-based Foundry tutorial. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of the discussion
preliminary discussions
came out of talking with Rogue. And I was just kind of throwing out
your first problem.
I was kind of throwing out the idea because we don't really have a Foundry manual, and I don't think any Foundry manual could be completely comprehensive. But I kind of got into the idea of, well, what if we were to kind of divvy out the work? I mean, and so we only, like, each person would only take like a specific section on a quick breakdown of triggers or placing assets or stuff like that. And so I ended up just opening up a Google Docs doc and kind of let everybody in and start just kind of editing out an outline. And so we actually have, see if I can pull it up here.
Well, one thing that I think would be a nice idea is to make a list of the maps and have a text document that with the maps listed and short descriptions that explain what the map is, even if they don't go into full details.
Yeah, it might be good to have that as a reference.
I mean, simple
screenshots
stuff
would be awesome.
Well,
just like little ones. Yeah.
I think it's just simple stuff like this is a Borg-themed interior, this is a Romulan-themed interior, and, you know, a few other bits of data about that, because that's one thing that occurred to me when I was making my New Year's challenge, is that most of the interior maps have a theme of some sort, like Romulan, Klingon, Borg, Cardassian, somewhere in there. I actually ended up using the Iconia interior simply because of the fact that it wasn't themed off of one of the major powers. Granted, there are the Iconian logos that I made a half-hearted effort to hide, but, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Cryptic has their room kits, and they had like 5 or 6 to start, so they kind of get reused everywhere. Something I was kind of thinking about as we were starting to write this, or at least outline this, is does anyone remember way back when someone on Starbase UGC made these like page like infographic-ish kind of things that would like explain one particular subject really quick, have a bunch of notes all over it, and like list of objectives, or this is how a NBC mobs or something like that. It would just quickly explain the that particular subject.
And Casmodi is in the chat room. Maybe he'll remember. Honestly, I don't think I do remember that.
This is years ago. Maybe I'll dig them up, see if I can find them. But I thought those were really cool.
Well, we originally had a text-based Foundry tutorial that Cryptic made back when the Foundry was first released. However, I don't think you can really access that page very easily right now because I think it's still there, but it redirects you to the current PWE page.
Yeah. Not to mention, I mean, as you say, it's going to be woefully out of date.
Yeah.
Does that even cover branching dialogue?
It may not. I don't know. Can't remember if we got branching dialogue on when it was on Tribble or if it was after. I think it. Oh dear God. Kendra is. You should put that up on the live stream, Dragoon. She's linking us pictures of her dolls that she created, and they are just the creepiest things I've ever seen. Outside of Children of the Corn.
You sure they're not from the Children of the Corn?
They might be.
They do seem kind of like they might have been inspired by it. Oh, question. What species made these things? Maybe this is normal for that species.
It's one that you've never met before.
Oh.
There's sort of a transporter accident that happens, and yeah.
That's some good costume work, gotta say.
I had so much fun. And I'm like hiding.
There's so many more
hiding
options.
The screen. I was like hiding the screen from my grandparents because I didn't want to freak them out.
So where were we? We were talking about a Foundry tutorial. So maybe we can get, some more input when we post this show on the forums. See what people think should be included. One thing that I was working on because we didn't seem to have one is a frequently asked questions for the Foundry, which I'd love to get people's input on. What questions we might need to answer for people, the usual ones that I thought of, like, why can't I see my mission that I just published? Which, we have sort of a standard set of answers to that, like, are you looking on the right faction? Are you looking on the right level character? Are you, have you set yourself to be a reviewer? Because that's where it goes. Things like that we can just link to people and have an answer every time.
One of my standard ones is, why is the Foundry taking forever to load? And why did I get this timeout error while the Foundry was loading?
Yep, that's a good one. We can include that one. It's hard for me to go back and think what I would have asked because it's been 5 years. What were you going to say, Kendra?
At some point, I had gone through and actually, after much searching, had found several blogs that actually had really nice write-ups on how to do different things in the Foundry, and I had bookmarked a bunch of them. And I'm kind of wondering if the people who had created those blogs might be interested in contributing.
Can we get those links so we can see who it was and maybe people we know?
Yeah, I'll have to look. It's not anybody I've ever seen. It wasn't. They weren't names that I recognized, and most of them were older posts. But yeah, I'll have to see if I can even find them after we're done. If I start messing around in my browser, it's gonna make Skype start cutting in and out because I've got too many things open.
We'll get that from you later then. Actually, this is going to dovetail into a discussion topic, but we'll save that for later because we still have a few other things to go through. So, Mark, have you been working on anything?
I've tinkered with a few things, but I haven't really spent a whole lot of time on stuff.
All right. I've been kind of in the same boat, tinkering with some things and not having lots of time. There's real life stuff going on, and obviously the crystalline entity. However, I have been at work on creating a social map version of Starbase 1, which I was making for a mission which is about half finished at the moment. But I figured, it could be good for a cool map that people just want to hang out and explore, just to put out hopefully get it up in the top 3 somewhere so people can just see it and check it out. So the map is built, and it's essentially finished because I'm at the asset limit and can't put anything else on it. So, which to my mind means it's finished. And basically I'm just going to be adding NPCs, adding dialogue. It's going to function like a historical monument, so there's going to be holograms of the people who were the base personnel 200 years ago, randomly placed around, and lots of them wandering around, so you can go talk to them, and they'll tell you things about their lives and about what happened to them. Of course, they all died, so it's going to be very depressing, like any good historical monument. Let's see. So it brings me to, I have a question for everybody I want to get people's input on. As it stands now, it's going to be a non-combat mission. It's just going to be the space map with some replicas of the ships that were in use at the time, like the NX class. And then you go down to the planet. It's actually a moon. And look around the base, talk to people, learn about what the base was and what happened, and then you're done. So, but I came up with an idea where you could add some combat to it. So you go into a holodeck simulation that takes you back up into space, and essentially you fight a battle with the Romulans, like a representation of the historical battle that started the Romulan War, and you try and see if you can win it. Whereas the original Federation, or not, Starfleet at the time, didn't win it. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Should I do that? Should I not do that?
I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah. I certainly can't think of a reason you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that was actually kind of like the first thought I had, was to get to pretend you're Kirk and reenact something Kirk did.
Well, it would be pre-Kirk. This is Enterprise era.
Well, same principle though.
But yeah, same principle. So essentially, you would go try and fight the battle and see if you can win it. The question is then I take you back out to the duplicate of the Starbase map, so it's like you're back outside the holodeck or something like that. So be very easy to do. I've got the space map built already. Just need to duplicate it and put some mobs on it and kind of construct the battle and have you fight it out. See if you can beat the odds.
Market it kind of like an SDF.
We could.
Maybe you could have it start from the holodeck or something.
Well, I want it to be out,
sort of deal.
I want it to be out in the. That sounds like it would need to be a separate mission. I want this one to be out in the universe, because it's like they've rebuilt this starbase on the original site in the Algernon system to look like the original starbase, so people can go and learn about the history of it. I'm kind of modeling it off the old forts out here in the west, out here on the plains. There's one up in Wyoming that I used to go to called Fort Laramie, which had a lot of the original buildings still there, or pieces of them still there, and they used to do historical reenactments and things like that. So this is what I'm even going to have like a little group of NPCs there. Maybe Kendra can help me, like a school tour that's going to be wandering around, like other tourists are going to be there.
That'd be really cool.
It's a tourist trap. Sir Boulevard is saying, I know Fort Laramie. That was on the Oregon Trail. It absolutely was. So, sounds like I've got a yay on adding the combat section to it. So, got to work on that. But this one should be actually quite easy to finish by the time we get some more Foundry doors. So, I don't know. It'll be somewhere out by Glorndon Core, because we won't have the actual Eldron system in game, so I'll just be able to get as close as I can.
Wait, are we double sure that it's not going to be here after the sector space revamp?
Yeah, I asked Taco. And I went on Dribble and looked for it, and it was not there. More's the pity.
Ooh, which is an exciting thing.
Yes.
Some of
Sector
the doors
space.
that are getting added.
Which should be good for you, because I'm sure probably Deep Space Nine will be a door, and Bajor... Is Bajor already a door?
Bajor, there is no Bajor space door, which was actually a huge problem for me when I was doing my mission. And, it didn't matter so much before, but now that we have the top 3, my mission starts on Earth Space Dock. Because I didn't want to... I had reasons for not wanting to use any of the other doors. Sure. I really wanted to start it in Bajoran space, but couldn't. So I'm going to be able to switch that.
Very exciting. I know I've got a mission set out that direction that I may change the door of, take advantage of the top 3. We'll have to see.
Well, I've actually already done that with one mission, where I adjusted the location of the door somewhat. And yeah, I'll probably end up doing that with some more missions. I have at least one mission where I actually have a plot reason why I can't use the top 3 system, which is, of course, the fact that you start off by talking to one of Jim Pock's aides, then you take a transwarp gate from the actual mission start door to where the mission takes place.
Yeah, I've got one like that where it's, there's a plot reason. In this case, it's, there's a whole sequence about you're beaming from Earth Space Dock to mirror Earth Space Dock, and I don't want to change that, so I'm not worried about putting that one in the top 3.
Yeah,
But
my
we'll
whole
definitely
reason for not...
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say... You first.
I was just going to say it was kind of one of those things with wanting to use the Bajor door, and I would have used the one actually on the planet, but because of the way there's kind of angry mobs and stuff on the actual map, and I have a quite peaceful Bajor in the mission, it wouldn't have made sense for you to transfer from one to the other, and all of a sudden it looks completely different and the mood and atmosphere is completely different. It would have been very obvious that you were switching from one map to another.
That's a good point, because there are all sorts of protesters and stuff on the Bajor ground map, aren't there?
Yes.
And I've completely forgot the other thing I was going to say. So let's move it
Sorry
on.
about that.
No big deal. Obviously, it wasn't important. So let's move it on. We've actually got 2 tech topics tonight. Dragoon, if you want to start getting the Foundry ready.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, we can talk about the first one. So I had a request, or somebody inquiring about how to make timers in the Foundry. I've never actually done it. Obviously, we don't have an actual timer thing that we can use, so we kind of have to use a workaround, which has been there forever. But I've never used it. Maybe Kendra, I know, has used it. Maybe she can kind of take us through how she set it up.
I used it once, and I set it up a few months ago. So without actually looking in the Foundry, I don't know that I could do it from memory.
Well,
As soon
I
as the
kind of know
editor-
the theory.
As soon as the
I don't
editor
know if
loads up, I can
Dragoon is-
demonstrate it.
You think you can demonstrate? Okay,
Yeah, I know how it's done.
that'd be fantastic. I don't know. Have you used it in a mission?
Yeah, in part 2, you talk to Kamala, and she crawls into a event, and you have to sit there and wait for her to get through. So eventually she
Oh,
calls you
right.
back and tells you
I had
she's
forgotten
through.
about that. I had forgotten about that. This is why I guess we didn't quite coordinate as well as we could have before the show, because you were scrambling to get everything activated after being home late from work. So
Yeah, that's okay. It's not hard to set up.
so we got
Just
two
go
things
ahead
that you
and-
can demonstrate.
All right, so I'm gonna. So the trick of this is actually using two enemy groups to basically fight each other, and then when one wins, or more accurately, when one loses, it sparks a trigger. That obviously it took a certain amount of time to complete. It's not perfect. You can't set it for like say 2 minutes 30 seconds. It's just kind of a general space of time. All right, so let me lay down some invisible walls here. Now I'm using invisible walls so you can see what's happening. Whatever if you want to do it. Okay, so for the sake of this demonstration, you'll have to pretend that this is actually a space that's been set off somewhere off to the side that the player can't get to. We got a little space over here. Let's throw in a console. Set it all off. Okay, and so I'm going to create two groups here. I tend to make one of them friendly, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so friendly group, let's make some federation. And I'm going to make them nice and powerful. So these are Captain 3s. This is as tough as they get. Definitely want to guarantee that my triggering enemy is going to die. I know Targs are actually a pretty popular choice for the enemy group.
Well, one thing that I've noted in my limited testing is that Orion ensign mobs seem to die the fastest.
Yeah, I mean, you can play around with it, see what produces longer. Like I said, it'll never produce an accurate time because things just work out differently every time these two groups will fight.
Yeah, there's all sorts of random number rolls involved with the combat. So, yeah, you know.
All right, so
Blame Dungeons and Dragons for that.
I'm sorry, Kendra, you were going to say?
I was just going to say that The nice thing is that you can make them as long as you want if you just keep making them spawn when one group dies. So you can, if you need a really long trigger, you can. Captain PF Dennis has some really super elaborate timers in some of his newer missions that he did. He was actually the one who was walking me through how to do it back in January.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably do some fun things with like random explosions and things blowing up and stuff, or like racing to get to some, have to beat something or something like that. As long as it's like off, it can't be seen by the player. It works pretty effectively as a timer. The only trick is that the player has to stay in close enough proximity to the NPCs to keep them from despawning, because the computer will despawn any NPCs that are too far away to save processing power and whatnot. And if they're not spawned, they won't fight.
Yes,
Alright.
and there is one thing you can do if you have to put them far away. If you move the pin close to where the player is going to be, that works.
One thing I've noticed is that this seems to be different depending on whether you're on ground or space. For ground, it's a relatively short distance, but for space, it seems to be like half the map.
I wonder if it's even different for interiors. Okay, so I've got this mob set to spawn when I activate this console. And let's throw in a pop-up dialog that occurs when this enemy group, or the enemy group, dies. So let's just say your time is up. Go ahead and change this to start the timer. Set the transition for. One thing to note, obviously, is you can't target or use friendly NPCs as trigger targets. It has to be an enemy NPC that you use the trigger on. All right. Go ahead and play the map, see what happens.
Now, before the show, we were talking about this a little bit, and it was mentioned that we might have some issues with this in map preview. It might need to be published first before it'll actually.
Yeah, that was something that had me banging my head against the wall for hours and hours and hours, and I was playing with it, couldn't understand why it wouldn't work because everything was where it was supposed to be, and finally Cass said, "Did you try publishing it and just checking to see if it works?" And then I published it, and sure enough, it worked. And then I went back into the Foundry and looked in the preview, and it still didn't work, so...
Yeah, we should get t-shirts that say, "When in doubt, test publish." All right, so I'm going to fire up my timer
Yeah,
here.
I've seen all sorts of bizarre random things happen when you're doing test plays that if they happen during the actual mission would be just like horribly broken and wrong. But, you know, usually they don't happen in the actual mission. Although now that I think about it, I do remember one thing that popped up during one of the seasons that wasn't something that actually only happened in live and didn't happen in test mode, which was there was this one glitch that would make mobs respawn a few minutes after you killed them.
All right, so as you can see, our timer went
I think
off.
they fixed that one, but
Yeah, timer seemed to go off without a hitch there.
And so it's definitely something you can see if this was happening behind a wall, and I couldn't see it, it would seem very much like a timer and not a bunch of enemies killing each other.
Now,
So
you would
that
hear
is,
it.
it depends on how close they are. Beyond a
close they
certain
are.
distance, you're not really going to hear their attacks. But let's see how far we can get away before they despawn.
Well, and moving them individually away from the pin does work, so you can literally have them completely on the other side of the map. That's what I did with mine.
I haven't always had success with that. Sometimes yeah, so you can get pretty far away before they'll despawn, but they will eventually. Anyway, that's the basics of a timer, and as Kendra said, you can chain them together and extend that time. I don't think you can really get it too much shorter than this. So if you're looking for like 5 seconds or something like that, then you're kind of out of luck. All right, and that's timers.
Fantastic. So
So,
moving
shall we-
along to our second tech topic.
So the other tech topic we wanted to cover tonight, or I wanted to cover, was lighting, or specifically Omni-light. And this is something for the longest time we thought didn't work. Taco Fangs had added it to see whether it was even possible. And the first thing we did is pull it into a bunch of interior maps, and nothing happened. And we assumed, well, it doesn't work. Oh well. Months later, I decided to play around with it on a outdoor map I was working on, and discovered that in fact it does work. It just only works under specific conditions, and it kind of requires that you know what is going on. So I've got an outdoor map, and I've created a little room here. I'm going to go ahead and create a Section 31 torture room. I'm going to put a chair here in the middle.
So obviously, we now have to title this episode 50 Shades of Foundry.
All right, so here are the Omni-lights that we have. We've got light dash, its distance white Omni. We've got 15 feet all the way up to 100 feet. Something to consider in this case is it works a little interesting because obviously the larger, I mean, it's almost like to think of it as a sphere, and the larger it is, the more the light will extend from its center. But it's also important to note that, say for instance, if I just threw down a 100-foot light, anything close to that, the center of that 100-foot light is going to be just completely blasted white. So you kind of have to be a little judicious about where and how you place your light. So in this case, I'm actually going to only use a 15-footer, and I'm going to put it about 5 feet above the ground. And place it right above my chair. You know what, just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and try, see if I can trigger it. So let's throw another console. And my Omni-light, make it visible on component complete, and select my console. Okay, so let's try this out, see how it works. So one of the trickiest things to understand about lights in STO is that there is a limit to how many lights any single object can be illuminated by. And it's actually a really low number of 2. Now, it would be easy to think that, 2 lights, so I just put 1 and 2 and I'm done. Well, unfortunately, STO already has lots of lights in it. All of the maps that we use, all of the backdrops that we use have lights built into them. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to throw my interact. Oh, and you can kind of see the light. I'm guessing 5 might have been too high. Pretty low ceiling. Let's bring that down to 2. And again, for instance, right now I'm using the Nopata Desert backdrop, and it's a nighttime, so it's actually a very dark background, one of the darkest I could find. But it already has a single light on it, which is the moonlight that's shining down. And really, in most cases, unless you're in complete blackness, you're probably being affected by at least 1 light. So there we go. So we got our spotlight for our chair for conducting Section 31 interrogations. You can see it affects both the chair, the ground, and the player. All right, so I've got another scene here, and I've got this street that I built earlier, and I've got these lampposts that I set up. And I'm going to put a 50-foot Omni-light out. That might be a little too much, but I didn't want to. I wanted to make sure I get it right on the first try. So I'm going to place Omni-lights at each of these lampposts. Okay, that's good. It's all set. Fire it up and see what happens. One thing I should point out is that I have yet to get this to work on an interior map. Even building in the black space on a map, I've yet to get it to work. My current running theory is that it's since interior maps are already well illuminated, that I'm already hitting the 2 light limit before I even place anything. All right,
Could be something to do with maybe the backdrops are set up differently.
Could be. As of yet, I don't know exactly what's causing it. Okay, so you can see here that very clearly the light is illuminating the street here, as well as the edge of the sidewalk, a little bit of the buildings and stuff. All good. But you'll notice that if you come over to this one, it's illuminating the sidewalk and the building, but there's nothing on the ground. And you're asking, hey, what's going on? Well, this ground is all one object, and it's already being illuminated by this light here. So that means that these other 2 lights, it's already hit its object limit, because you got the moon, that's the first one, and then this one, that's the second one. And then by the time you get to the third one, it can only be illuminated by it can only illuminate the building, which is too far away to be affected by this light. So something I kind of had figured out is that what you need to do, kind of here, let's go ahead and take the size down on this foundation block. And I'm just going to take it down all the way down to 100. I'm going to segment my street. All right, so I'm going to put the gaps between the street, just between the trying to find just about the middle point of the in the 2 lamps, and I'm going to break this street down into multiple objects. That way, it can each light can illuminate a segment, but it doesn't flow through. I'll move this street lamp a little bit further away. Okay, so I've got my lamp. Let's go ahead and test this again. Something else good to note is that having started to figure out how the lights work in Stowe, I've noticed that the Omni-lights are not the only objects that have light or emit light. I can say from personal experience that those cave beans with the light on it, I know those put out a light. And I'm sure there's a few other objects that do. All right, so you can see we've got our street lamps, and they're now illuminating all 3 points on the street, as we've got our street divided into 3 parts. Obviously, these are coming off as a little bright, so what I probably would do is either raise them away from the street, or reduce their radius, make them a little bit dimmer. And that is Omni-lights 101.
That's fantastic. I mean, that opens up some things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ton of fun. Like I said, I mean, I started playing around with this with EVA resolutions, and once I kind of figured out how they work, they are so much fun to just kind of play around with and strategically place out your lights. Obviously, if you're going to use these for an interior, you're going to have to build on a ground map and do like a sky castle or something like that.
Because I was just thinking about, okay, so my mission Cold Winds, which incidentally Userel just played for one of his Foundry frolics. Okay, so it's kind of a zombie mission, and I have this interior where you first discover and are attacked by the zombies. And it's an actual interior. I just used a cryptic map. And so I'm thinking about myself, okay, so I could rebuild it as a sky castle on a ground map, and then I could make it really dark using the Nopada backdrop like you've got here, and then use the lights to play with the lighting and turn it on and off and make it real creepy.
Yeah, I mean, these things are totally fully triggerable. So if you want to do that scene where the lights are turning off, or the darkness
one by
is chasing
one,
you,
moving towards you.
Yeah.
Just like, in the original Unreal, the first time you see a Scourge, it's got this great sequence where the lights, you're down a long hall and the lights at the far end start turning off and off and off towards you, and then you get attacked. I could totally
there you go. You can use triggers to sequentially turn off the lights.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that excellent tech topic. So for a discussion item tonight, I've got something I want to get your guys' and the community's input on. If you had to design a Foundry mission as intentionally the first mission that a new player plays, or a player that has never played a Foundry mission before, what do you think it should be like? What is a good introductory mission?
30 minutes or less. Generally light on reading. It depends. I mean, what's the goal of this mission other than to be the first?
Give people a good impression of the Foundry, leave them wanting to play more.
Okay, well, I mean, it's going to have an engaging story without a lot of text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, now, I don't necessarily agree with that. because when I fell in love with the Foundry was when I played the Syndicate Extraction, and that's not exactly text light. I mean, it's not super text heavy, but as a completely new player discovering the Foundry, that was like maybe the third mission I played. And after I played the Syndicate Extraction, I said, I want to do this. How do I do this? It's also not that short. I mean, it's not super long either, but
it's engaging. It makes you want to keep playing, and it makes you want to read.
Well,
one example, Trek.
Yeah.
Well, one example I can think of is the Flight of the Kitty Hawk series that, as far as I can tell, is no longer available. One I played a long time ago where I think the author wrote like 20 missions in the series. I don't remember who wrote it, but there's like 20 missions or so, and what it is you're a Federation ship captain. You got a distress call from this ship called the Kitty Hawk, which was being attacked by Klingons, I think, and that's how it starts. Where it goes is that you have the Kitty Hawk is being chased across the galaxy by Klingons and a variety of other races that are allied with the Klingons. And I forget exactly what the reason was for them not simply running towards Federation space. Maybe the Klingons cut them off or something. But anyways, you have to find them and save them from the Klingons, Orions, and I forget exactly who all else. The cool thing about this one is that each of the individual missions wasn't really all that long, and it had an interesting story. Like, one thing that I found that was particularly amusing is that there was this one scene where you're analyzing the wreckage of something that had been blown up by a group of Orions, and one of the comments on it is that it appeared as though the ship had been used for target practice after it was destroyed, because apparently the Orions had nothing better to do with their time than just park their ship next to it and take pot shots at the Hulk to see how many holes they could burn in it.
So
it also has some pretty cool map designs.
Yeah, map design was one thing that came to my mind, is that, it would be a good opportunity to show people what the Foundry is capable of. So you need some good looking, interesting maps that, are not just stock cryptic maps.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, just the mission would need to be very well polished.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. So you need a good editing team to go through it and find everything. So, I mean, as you're kind of thinking about this, think about where people are when they might first encounter the Foundry. And it's different now because we've got the top 3 systems. So I think they're going to encounter it, as they level up to, what is it for Feds? 11? 5? 7?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Somewhere around there. So, you might, plot-wise, you might make it fit in with that early game era. So, you could involve the Klingon War, or you could not. You could make it just completely standalone. I don't know what the advice
one thought here is that while the Klingon War is going on, what's the other side of the Federation doing?
Yeah. This is a tough one for me because I have such a extensive background with the Foundry. I mean, there were no Foundry missions when I became involved in the Foundry. There were none at all. because it hadn't even been released on Triple yet. So I don't have that experience of, this is the first mission I played or something like that, other than, maybe some people's test missions when they were on Triple. Sir Boulevard says first mission he played through was City of the Palmar-Ree, which, if you're familiar with any of Alamac's missions, features great maps, engaging story, and good dialogue.
Oh, the first mission I ever played was Captain Revo's Worst of All Worlds,
Yeah,
which was
I
on
remember that
Triple
one.
at the time.
Back in the day.
Actually, only ever.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I've only ever actually written one true, proper mission on Tribble, and that one was the one where Imani goes and directs the player, a KDF character, as they hijack the Transwarp Gateway in orbit of Pluto and use it to gate to Vulcan and attack the planet Vulcan.
So here's a question. Would you do how different do you think they should be, a KDF introductory mission versus a Federation introductory mission?
Well, KDF side, an introductory mission would probably be something like handling a border dispute Klingon style, or something along those lines, because you're going to set it early in the Klingon storyline, which is during the Federation War, but the Federation isn't the only thing the Klingons are occupied with at the time, because one of the early Klingon story missions involves fighting Romulans.
Yes, it most certainly does.
And like Boulevard said, they would probably involve heavy combat, because the Klingon approach is, we want you to leave this solar system. You have 5 minutes to comply, or we will blow you out of space.
And he says heavy on politics, which is a good point, because, if you think about Klingon stories in the TV show, what it was about? It was about fighting and about infighting.
But see, that's a thing that I think would be interesting to see. Is I came to the Foundry really, 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 really early. And my reason for that was because I was dissatisfied with the cryptic story arc. I came to the game because I had just finished watching Deep Space Nine and I wanted more Trek, watching it for the first time. And a lot of the storyline missions they didn't have the ethical basis or the diplomacy that the TV show had. And I think that's the side of the Klingons that we really don't see, is the honorable side of the Klingons. They're really kind of like the original series Klingons more than anything in the game. You don't really see your next gen, or even, I realize that, everything that happened in Deep Space Nine with the Klingons happened, but you still had like Martok, and you don't see those sort of characters so much in the game.
You don't see the subtlety of the Klingons. It's a more
you don't see the depth that's there, the culture and the integrity. Like
I think you didn't.
You
didn't before, but I think it is present in some of the remade missions.
It actually comes up rather heavily in the Romulan storyline, of all places, because the whole heroic sacrifice thing is part of why Jim Pock decides that maybe possibly allying with the Romulan Republic isn't a bad idea.
Well, it's certainly something that Cryptic has gotten better at storytelling as a whole, as they've gone on.
Because I'm thinking about the storyline with Alexander or whatever his Klingon name is.
Kimtar.
Kimtar. Yeah, I'm thinking of that whole storyline, which I thought was a pretty good storyline, very good Klingon storyline. But it's a very recent one. I mean, that was only put in with Legacy of Romulus.
Yeah, and I guess it wasn't so much intended as a criticism of the cryptic storyline, just as a place that we can fill in with the Foundry.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm always telling people it's like, if you got a storyline you want to see, or something you feel is missing, we have the tool to do that, to put that in ourselves. And
Yeah,
there's
my favorite. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
I was just say, what you're referring to is something that a term I coined a while back as Trek value. If you're going to make an introductory Foundry mission, it should have some good Trek value to it. And should essentially be, like something you might see on the TV show.
Well, what I was going to say is my personal favorite KDF story missions that I've played involve races that are in canon, are established in canon, but they discuss them in the context of canon, but also they put the Stowe twist on it, because one of them is Krios Falling by Alien du Jour, who, Stowe doesn't talk about the Kriosians. So he explores what we know of them from the TV show and extrapolates that forward into what they would be like in Star Trek Online. Granted, I personally think that it's more likely that the Kriosians simply are servants that run a farming planet or something like that. But his mission, as he wrote it out, was quite good. And I liked it because of the fact that the Stowe storyline doesn't address that, because, there are several species that we see in the TV show that are established as being servants of the Empire, and the Kriosians are one of them. The other is this series of missions about the Gorn Rebels, which I don't remember who wrote those, but they were kind of cool because it looks at the Stowe storyline from the point of view of the Gorn who aren't happy with the idea of being part of the Empire.
I believe those come out of the DOF missions. We see little bits of it in the DOF missions. But Jorgen, I wanted to ask you, how are you viewing this hypothetical mission being presented to players?
Well, it would have to be something that is given to players, not something that they seek out because they might not know it's there otherwise. So, it's something that pops up in the quest tracker. A dialogue that pops up when you reach. So, it might be something that would have to be sort of, sponsored by Cryptic itself. Something that somebody creates, and somebody decides, okay, this one is good. We like this one. Let's do that. And it just a pop up that goes to that, and then maybe there's explanations of this is a Foundry mission created by players for you, and then at the end it's here's how you find more. And it's a showcase of what we can do, and a way to get people interested.
So I would almost argue that you kind of need to have a broader audience focus than a typical Foundry mission. Because I'm always saying, or we're all saying, you need to build your Foundry mission for yourself.
In this case, it's more of a right to your audience kind of a thing.
Yeah, right to the general audience of Stowe. I mean, I definitely
I was thinking about that just a moment ago in the context of what we were talking about, doing things that we might feel are missing from the rest of the game. And the one thing that we hear about so often right now is missing is exploration. And so, it could be you could set this mission at Delta Volantis, if it's a Fed side mission, because it's right next to ESD or pretty close. And, make it an exploration mission so that type of gameplay is there, and you make, it's a way to make the point that this can be available through the Foundry.
And
Yeah.
I think that it would also be very important to make it, in what you're saying about making it appeal to a variety of audiences, make sure that it's not written for one gender of player. And also make sure that it's not written for one age demographic. I realize that the age demographic is somewhat centralized, but not necessarily. I think there are definitely things that can be done in writing that almost type a certain player, as if we know who that player is going to be.
I would almost
It's
argue that in a lot of
inclusive
cases
language.
it's almost inadvertent.
Yeah, it would
Um,
have to be very deliberate that we made it very generalized.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So I think we often don't think about doing that.
And
a
I mean,
lot-
I know I've caught myself doing the same thing, except for I'm writing like it's going to be another female playing it, and it's like, wait a second.
We often write as if we are going to be the player.
well, I
We
mean,
write for
that's
ourselves
natural.
as the player. Yeah, it absolutely is.
I would say, I mean, you'd also have to keep it very generalized to the player's race.
Mhm.
I would almost say, I mean, really, the best inspiration for something like this is actually looking back at Cryptic's work, because Cryptic has to worry about the broad audience far more than we do. And I'm not saying that we replicate like a Cryptic mission or Cryptic style exactly. We can certainly put in a lot of those elements that make the Foundry unique, but at the same time, we kind of got to consider it like how Cryptic does.
A little bit, yeah. And I think you would also you would want to make it so it appeals to all skill levels as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Which
Well,
can be next to
One
impossible.
other thing that
Yeah.
Well, one other thing that I've thought of on several occasions is that writing race-specific dialogue is nice, but you're always going to end up in situations where you can't necessarily write a specific dialogue for each race that you might want to do a dialogue for. I mean, as I've mentioned on several occasions, I have a variety of unconventional character concepts that I use. And there is absolutely no way that I would expect someone to write dialogue options specific to those races because, let's face it, some of them aren't Federation members. Some of them aren't even races from that universe.
Yeah,
Well, I think
Dragoon was
Yes,
throwing a
like-
whole bunch of ideas for new characters at me this week, and created some that definitely no Foundry author would ever think to write dialogue for.
I mean, there's always going to be outlier examples.
So the best
I
way to
had
do
my,
it is... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, as an example, I had my changeling telling me about eating something in a Foundry mission I was playing. And I was like, wait, what?
very- Very occasionally, you get someone who stumbles onto dialogue that just fits perfectly with your character. I was playing one on my Federation Klingon, and the dialogue, some of the dialogue choices were very angry and very, very Klingon-like in a Federation mission. And like, normally I would say that doesn't work. You should make it more neutral, but it's so perfect.
Well, if you have an angry option and a less angry option, that would fit reasonably well. Well, one of the situations that I come up with is playing through stories that involve Bajorans and or Cardassians as my Vorta character, because they have odd reactions to Vorta in the TV show, and I can only imagine what they would think of Vorta nowadays.
And one thing I would say about, if you're making an introductory mission is to steer clear of some of the more complicated and roundabout things that we might do in the Foundry. Like, I'm thinking, for instance, of Rogue Enterprise's First Cause and Effect, which makes you die several times. When in most of the game, you're trying to avoid dying.
Yeah, and you don't really want to have forced respawns in an introductory mission, because Cryptic doesn't do that ever. I cannot think of a single Cryptic mission where it's scripted that you lose a fight. I mean, there is at least one mission I know of that at least used to have an objective that you could not complete, and it would always be marked as a failed objective in the mission tracker, but it didn't involve you getting killed. It just involved you. You're supposed to do something according to the mission tracker. When you attempt to do it, it doesn't work, so you get this red X in the mission tracker, and then the mission continues on from there, because it wasn't really you weren't really supposed to complete it, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are some other things that would be good to avoid in a introductory mission?
I would say be very careful about following Cryptic's or text formatting. The way they, like, for instance, capitalize and word objectives, or how they make use of the title field, or
so that it's very seamless between Cryptic missions and this introductory mission.
Yeah, all these little branding things that like no normal person would ever notice, but you kind of start to notice if subconsciously.
And stick to things like, putting captain dialogue strictly in the buttons and not anywhere else.
Yeah,
I would say.
Just
for this one, and then you can branch out on those things, as people get into the Foundry. The great Foundry.
One other thing that is a good idea is not to have objectives that have no marker. Granted, it's not necessarily something you want to do as a general rule, but for Cryptic missions, they always have some sort of big, giant thing to mark where you're supposed to be going. I mean, either you push the V key to do a tricorder scan to find the thing you're looking for, or there's this big green circle or something like that. I mean, heck, when people complained about the base Voth battle zone having objectives where you couldn't tell if it was down or up, they added a new UI feature that would put these boxes where you could see if it was up or down.
I would actually say that
ease of access
don't
is,
even,
I think, what you're talking about, making sure that you can get to every objective and that it's very clear to the player where you need to go and what you need to do.
I would say don't even rely on the V key. I mean, that's something that we've kind of taken advantage of in the Foundry, but it's not as common outside of the Foundry. So, but I think the point about the waymarkers is a really good one. I know in EVA resolutions, when you're looking for the enemy, I didn't mark it, expecting that you would look around and eventually find it. But it did frustrate a few people.
And I think one thing you would want to do is make sure you get a good sample size of testers to test the mission, players from all sorts of backgrounds.
Oh, and Bazag brought up an interesting point. Over broad markers, where you have this giant circle and you have to find things within the circle. This is something that the old exploration cluster maps were really bad about, because you have the beam down, scan 5 rocks objectives. Well, there's 5 rocks somewhere on the map. Well, the objective circle for the scan 5 rocks does not have a separate circle for each rock. It has a big giant circle for all 5 rocks, and you had to use the V key to find the rocks. Otherwise, you were never going to find them, because you would literally have to search the entire map for them. Even the V key has a limited range. So if you're all the way on the wrong side of the map, it's going to be out of range and you're not going to be able to find it. Because it'll only point to it if you're, I think it's like within 100 meters for ground.
I didn't actually know there was a range on that.
Well, it's something I encountered years ago on the exploration cluster things, because, like I said, a lot of them would have things scattered all over the map, so I had to rely on pushing the V key to find them. And if you're all the way off on one side of the map and the thing you're looking for is all the way off on the other side of the map, sometimes it would just give you the red circle like there was nothing to scan for, but it would pop up text telling you how many things you were looking for still.
Mm.
So you would have to like run to the middle of the map, scan again, and then it would give you a heading to something.
That's good advice for everybody to know, because I didn't know that. I learned something tonight. I think another thing to avoid is, Kendra, you were talking about ethical dilemmas earlier, which is a big feature of Star Trek itself, but not a big feature of STO. But you want to avoid railroading people into decisions that they might not like, because you wouldn't want somebody to finish this mission and be angry.
Yeah.
Because you want them to play more missions. So, you don't want it to be like I'm picking on Rogue Enterprise again, but you don't want it to be like the Orders series where you finish it and you're very angry about the decisions that your captain made.
Yes, but at the same time, you do want them to feel emotion. Because,
Sure.
see, that's another thing is that Trek can make me angry, it can make me cry, it can make me happy. And I hadn't really had that experience with Star Trek Online until I got into the Foundry. I never had a storyline grab me so much that I was like ready to strangle someone or sniffling or laughing at something.
Well, there have been several people on the forums who apparently got that angry about the existence of Tov and Kev, and another group which may or may not
at least you're
overlap
feeling
with
something.
with the first group who wants to eradicate the Kobali from existence.
Making you feel something is very good, but I think for an introductory mission, you want to err on the side of making them feel happy about something, or good, or a sense of accomplishment, so that they'll want to play more. And then after that, you can get into things where you make them feel depressed or angry.
Basically, a comfort food
Or
type
sad
mission.
might be.
Or sad. I've made people feel sad before when I've killed off characters and things like that. Had somebody write a eulogy in place of a Foundry review one time for one of my characters. That was great.
Yeah, that is awesome.
I think we've kind of covered just about everything we can possibly say
Just
about
about.
this.
A lot of ideas. One final question. Do you think it should be a separate one, or actually it would have to be two, for Romulan players?
I would really want to say yes.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the I would have to say yes as well, and I think one of the complaints about the Romulans is they don't feel like a full faction, and I think this would help if there were. Obviously, I've always felt there should be more Romulan missions, and I'm converting some into one right now. And I think this would help them feel like a full faction if there's more Foundry missions for them.
I think the problem with that, and the reason why the devs didn't do that, is because of the way Romulan teaming works.
Yes, it is
From
definitely
a team play standpoint, Romulans are either Fed or Klingon. Romulans of opposing allegiances cannot team with each other, except under the same circumstances that Feds can team with Klingons.
Yeah.
Which
That's
makes playing Foundry missions awkward, because if a Foundry mission involves shooting Klingons, a Klingon allied Romulan would be unable to complete the mission.
And of course, if it's a Fed mission meant for Fed Romulans, then Federation characters can play it too, and it will be weird. You know, that what you say is absolutely true, and that's the mechanics side of it. So if the mechanics say that, you know, you're either a Fed or a Klingon, then you have to try and generate a feel that you are a Romulan. A feeling of that instead of the actuality of that. So, you know, having a Foundry mission in which you're addressed as a Romulan with Romulan attitudes and Romulan plot lines can help generate that feel that you are a Romulan.
Well, you remember how at one point in time there was the ability to create Romulan faction Foundry missions? I think that was added to the game in a point in time where they hadn't nailed down the exact specifics of how Romulan teaming would work. Because I remember in one of the dev blogs, they had mentioned that Romulans would be, from a certain point of view, kind of like a gray faction when it came to teaming with non-Romulans, and they would always be able to team with other Romulans. But eventually they changed their minds about that for whatever reason, and that's not the way it currently works.
Yeah, there were obviously some things that they tried that didn't pan out. And for whatever reason, Romulan missions was one of them.
So something that occurs to me in this hypothetical mission, we would have to be super uber vigilant about stamping out any bugs that might crop up.
Absolutely.
Because a breakage there would multiply tenfold if this is an actual pointed to mission by Cryptic.
Yeah, so essentially be a semi-official mission, even above, you know, say a spotlight mission.
Yes.
Yeah, this reminds me
be a
of
whole level above that.
this one guy on the forum who was making this angry post about how certain STF was obviously broken because his ship outfitted with all Mark 14 gear couldn't complete the mission. Obviously, it wasn't the mission; it was him. But when you have it's in situations where you have newbies, it's always important to make it so that the newbie has an easy way of knowing whether something went wrong because of something they did or if it is just a random glitch. Obviously, this is best done by making sure there are no random glitches, but, you know.
Well, you know, it's something that you would probably need access to after every season update so that you could make sure it's working. So we all know how that goes. All right. We did start a little bit late, so I think we have a few minutes left. If anybody has any other topics we can talk about real quick. And not hearing any suggestions.
Kendra, did you have anything you wanted to talk about since you're the guest?
Not in particular, no.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we'll end it there. I just want to make one little quick announcement. I have joined the cast of another show, something that will not interfere with this show, never fear. But I have joined the cast of Frack Stars over on Holosuite Media. Show all about Battlestar Galactica. We're going through each episode and talking about each episode. We just finished up, as far as released episodes go, we just finished up the last episode of season 1, which was Kobal's Last Gleaming. So you can find that over on holosuitemedia.com. And we just had a recording session for the first episode of season 2. So check it out. It's a lot of fun. reliving things from 10 years ago. Dragoon, why don't you throw up our contact info?
Okay. Can be reached at email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We can also be found on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Mark here can be reached at Markhawkman. And I can be reached at Greendragoon. Kendra?
Generally, the easiest way to find me is just to pop into the chat room because I'm usually logged in. Now, anyway.
That would be the starbaseugc.com chat room.
Yes, yes.
For anyone listening who's not familiar with that. All right, well, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.